Hi, and thank you for tuning into My Histoire. I'm Natasha, and in this episode, I'll be reviewing the movie Set It Off. Set It Off is a 1996 film that tells the story of four black women in Los Angeles who decide to get even with a world that seems intent on trying to keep them down. Friends since childhood who have grown up together in a housing project, the women experience a series of setbacks as they try to improve the living situations of themselves and their loved ones. Desperate, and with little left to lose, they decide to start robbing banks, with hopes that the money will enable them to escape. But while each heist offers a bigger payday, they also bring more problems and complications. I love movies in general, but my favorites are usually psychological thrillers and action films with spies, heists, or anything where people are strategizing. As a woman, I like movies with strong female leads, and a plus if there's some male eye candy. Thus, Set It Off is one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm a huge movie fan and have seen a lot of films, but this and Silence of the Lambs have consistently been and will likely remain at the top of my list. Now, from the jump, I'm going to admit that my favorite character in Set It Off was Francesca Frankie Sutton, played by Vivica Fox. Don't get me wrong, all of the leads showed up and showed out. Stoney Newsome, played by Jada Pinkett, is the star, and I dug it because she got to be my Blair Good Underwood in his prime. But I also felt compassion for her because her life was filled with tragic losses. Cleo, played by Queen Latifah, was a trigger-happy nutcase that these movies tend to require. And Tashawn, played by Kimberly Elise, was there. Imagine growing up in a rough neighborhood, plagued by violence, and doing what's necessary to stay on the right track. You find a decent job and work hard to prove yourself to be both dependable and diligent about your responsibilities, only to have circumstances beyond your control upend all of the efforts you've put into building your reputation. That's the situation that Frankie finds herself in, after staring down the barrel of a gun, watching someone get shot, and having their blood splatter all over her. In mere moments, she loses the path and possibilities she likely envisioned using to attain a better life. Unable to use references from the previous job, she has difficulties finding a new one and has few alternative options. Needing to earn a living, she goes to work with her friends at Luther's Janitorial, a commercial cleaning business whose owner is in dire need of a human resources department and some management training. Unprofessional does not begin to describe Luther and how he speaks to his employees, and what's sad is that either having grown used to it or knowing they have few other choices, the women joke about or brush off his comments. He is one of the 2.5 bums and Set It Off. The half a bum in Set It Off would be Stoney's younger brother Stevie, who she's been raising on her own since their parents died in a car accident. It's unclear what her life was like before her parents died, but she's struggling and sacrificing to take care of her brother. She invested her hopes and dreams in her brother, and her and their circle of friends are proud that he has not only graduated from high school, but will be attending UCLA. But surprise, he won't be going to college because, as he tells Stoney, he didn't receive the scholarship needed to cover his tuition. Nate, the other full bum and Set It Off, is an older, relatively financially successful used car salesman. Not stereotyping, but if I was, that should tell you everything you need to know about him right there. He makes old man noises when he sits down and has an ugly comforter set which matches his soul. I'm realizing that I hold grudges about particular characters because I still roll my eyes whenever I see this man in other roles. Stoney, who should probably win a family award for being the most committed sister ever, takes it upon herself to do whatever is necessary to get her brother the money he needs. Had it been me, old boy Stevie would have gotten a pat on the shoulder and I'm sure he'd figure something out. Instead, she sacrifices her body and self-esteem for her brother's future. To be fair, Stevie did not know and might not have agreed with the lengths to which Stoney goes to get him the money he needs for college. But the fact remains that he lies about not even getting into school or wanting to attend college. Some of this is feeling he's grown and wants to do his own thing, but the way he went about it was incredibly immature. I completely felt Stoney yelling at him and giving the angry pinky. I mean, it's an extreme and dysfunctional example, but it points to the reality that quite often women are expected or put pressure on themselves to sacrifice their needs and set aside their ambitions to care for loved ones and or support their significant others. Cleo at first glance appears one-dimensional, but has some hidden depth. She's broke, lives in a garage, owns a raggedy car, has a record for having stolen cars, and has a seemingly mute girlfriend who likes fancy underwear. She doesn't see a life for herself or aspire to more than being in the hood, and she feels she doesn't belong anywhere else. It doesn't seem like she has any great love for the hood itself, but rather that she can't see or imagine being anywhere else, or where she'll be in 5 years. And she doesn't care because she's struggling just trying to survive the here and now. Tashana is having a hard time paying for childcare and loses custody due to suspected neglect when her son is injured in an accident at her job. She's just as sympathetic as the other characters, but I just didn't like the way she came across. I think TT was supposed to be a bit naive compared to the other women, but at times her mannerisms and way of speaking bordered on being childish, and she seemed a little bit slow. The character TT is harmless and inoffensive, and I've also seen Elise in other things, so I know she can act. It's like I still can't quite put my finger on if it's the character or the acting that I found off-putting. I understand why TT was there, as she had some fairly important moments, but she was my least favorite character. One of the themes throughout Set It Off is the many ways in which these black women are victimized, not just based on their race, but also on their gender and socioeconomic standing. They work and aspire to more than the lives they currently have, with some hoping to get out of the neighborhood. But intersectional racism locks them into low-paying jobs and exploitation by the men around them. There's a classic scene where the foursome is sitting out on the roof of one of their homes, smoking weed and chatting. Clea touches on the reality that a building across the way, like across the street, I think it's like across from train tracks or something like that, once housed a business that provided well-paying jobs. The women reminisce and imagine how much better their lives could be earning a higher hourly rate. The thing is that their desires are quite simple, but with no clear path or opportunities, they seem impossibly out of reach. I believe that most people are decent, and a lot of criminal activities are a byproduct of poverty and or people feeling hopeless rather than a burning desire to do wrong. The ladies are a representation of some of the people in the neighborhood. They're going through hard times as good-paying jobs are hard to come by. With limited means for earning a decent living and multiple setbacks, people lose hope in following the rules to achieve progress, and in desperation, some turn to criminal activities. I'm not rich, but they're a special kind of broke, because $12,000 is not enough money for me to risk my life in prison time. Like, I would be disappointed if I robbed a bank and came away with just $12,000, let alone having to split that with 3 other people. But then everybody is hustling everybody, because when the story of their first robbery is reported on the news, they mention that $90,000 was taken. The discrepancy leads the women to realize that the bank has pulled off a robbery of its own, an insurance scam. Keith, played by Blair Underwood, is beautiful and serves as welcome eye candy, but Set It Off really isn't about him. Stoney and Keith don't seem to have anything in common, but I think they help each other get out of their comfort zones. His home with a brass bed in the corner, like what Jean got her head stuck in, and all the decor were probably the baller crib in the 90s. In a movie about a criminal enterprise, there's always that one person involved who is out of control and essentially throwing rocks at the pin. Cleo is that person, and she is a terrible criminal. She's like a female old dog, except she has a girlfriend. Going on a spending spree on car upgrades and lingerie for your girlfriend is the problem with stealing or being involved with criminal activities. You can't spend stolen money as though you won the lottery or got a bonus from work. It's highly questionable when a forever broke person suddenly starts spending like they're rich. There's also her foolishness of throwing CDs out of the vehicle she steals for the robberies. I get it, it's the 90s, but I would think she'd be aware of fingerprint analysis. And I will admit that on a whole, their disguises were terrible. I mean, you don't look that much different with like some long bob wigs and sunglasses. I like that there are these little comedic interludes that help to break up the heist aspect of the film. For example, TT laying on the floor pretending to be a regular bank customer, but doing way too much with her dramatic crying. The Godfather Scene is a creative take on a necessary conversation that the women need to have to move forward after, some disagreements. When the ladies pull off their second robbery, they get away with enough money for everyone to get about $75,000 a share. There should be enough startup cash for them to get out of the neighborhood or at least make some changes to their lives. They hide the money at a job site with plans to retrieve it and skip town in 3 days. What could go wrong, right? This is a movie, so we all know things can't go exactly according to plan, with the ladies' idea to just ride off into the sunset. Riding high from her payday allows Stoney and her girls to finally envision a future that looks bright. There's a brief break for romantic shenanigans as we see Stoney go from a loud and colorful Madame Butterfly kimono-looking outfit to a sleek black dress and fancy hairdo. The transformation is courtesy of the beautiful on the outside and even on the inside Keith, who takes her out in a limo for a wonderful evening despite some of their time being spent at a work event. I remember watching Set It Off when I was younger, and for a moment, just a brief moment, Keith helped Stoney edge out Frank as my favorite, and Jada Pinkett was my hero. Listen, I love good food. I like men that like good food too. So Keith and his international cooking, I loved it. It's like Cinderella where Stoney has this life-changing day with her homegirls and an unforgettable night with Keith. But after leaving Prince Charming in the morning, she learns that this vision of a new life she thought she'd be living has fallen apart, and her shot at a new future is slipping away. All because of that damn Luther. From early in the movie, Luther and his bad attitude were a problem. Now with his new janky perm and the lady's hard-earned stolen money, he's a problem to the 10th power. And problems seem to beget problems. The group is already on the police's radar for the bank robberies, though they don't know it as yet. And their confrontation with Luther just brings more unwanted attention. The lesson here is that crime doesn't pay, because they're in an even worse situation than before they started the bank robberies. And now they feel like they don't have a choice but to pull off one more heist, because they have to get out of town. Isn't that the way it always happens? Criminals get away with their first crime and they tempt fate by trying it again. And that overconfidence leads to taking a chance on that last big score that becomes their downfall. Stoney is shaken from everything that has already taken place and doesn't feel comfortable robbing another bank. But peer pressure is a mother, and she doesn't want to bill in her friends. And this is why crime doesn't pay unless you're rich enough to begin with to get away with it, or you're part of an organization that's big enough where society will fall apart if it fails. But that's a conversation for another day. My heart broke for beautiful Keith, watching him sit in a meeting about bank robberies and come to the realization that Stoney is one of the robbers on the surveillance video. I'm pretty sure that Cleo's girlfriend does not say a single word in the entire film. I mean, not so much as an article, consonant, or vowel. Which is kind of funny because Frankie comments on it. As the film reaches its climax, we see her worried and crying, watching the news, and somewhere across town, Keith is also curled up, beautifully might I add, worried and watching the news. Everything that could go wrong with the robbery does, and sweet simple TT is the first to die, and the friends are forced to leave her body behind in an abandoned getaway vehicle. Terrible. And arguably one of the best police chases in movie history begins. Sure, there are the crashes and near misses, but I can think of few other such chases that pack such an emotional punch. Cleo is the OG best friend. She sacrifices herself and continues the car chase before engaging in one of the most emotionally tumultuous shootouts ever. I have watched Set It Off many times, and somehow I'm always sitting in my house and my allergies just start acting up when she lights up a cigarette and that sad song starts playing. Next thing I know, my throat feels dry and scratchy, and there's this liquid welling up in my eyes. All these years later, I've cheered on Queen Latifah's career, but I can't think of another role that has allowed her talent to shine to this degree or with such range. Each death is more traumatic than the last, and Frankie's reflected the arc of what we see of her life. I know Stoney's supposed to be the star character, but my favorite is and will always be Frankie, whose life was completely blown up because of other people's actions. She followed the rules and got a good job in hopes of lifting herself out of the neighborhood, only to lose her job and have her life blown apart because someone who happened to be from the neighborhood did a bad thing. It's ironic that while being fired, she talks about her commitment to her job and provides having counted out $250,000 by hand as one of the examples. And women later talk about the difficulty of the four of them counting out a similar amount by hand after one of their heists. Frankie has the opportunity to shoot the cop who previously callously interrogated her. But revenge isn't what she wants, it's freedom. And she's heartbreakingly gunned down, trying to make one last attempt to run to freedom. R.I.P. to Francesca Hutton, the mastermind who came up with all the strategies. Cleo was cool too, and TT was alright, I guess. There's a ray of hope in Stoney getting away, but she has all of this money and only memories of her friends. She also loses the one guy, the one beautiful guy, who is always thinking of how to make her happy and gives rather than taking from her. I think the film's creators know they had to give the audience some kind of a win. Can you imagine if she had died as well? If you haven't guessed it as yet, I think Set It Off is a great movie. It's not your typical heist film, as there's comedy, romance, drama, and action. Some aspects of the storyline are a bit wonky, but nothing majorly unbelievable. It's part of the classic 90s black film canon, but still holds up 20 plus years later. I love movies and hope to one day have a great theater room with large movie posters from my favorite films. Without a doubt, Set It Off will have a place on my wall. If you're into action films but somehow managed to have never seen it before, I recommend checking it out. Or if you've seen it before, do what I do. Watch it again and hope for a different ending. Thanks for tuning in. Show notes are available on the Noir Histoire website via the link in the episode description. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up button. You can also share it online, on social media, or with someone you think might enjoy the episode. Doing this will help other people find the show, which helps it to grow. If you aren't already subscribed to the Noir Histoire YouTube channel, I hope you subscribe now and return to get motivated, get inspired, and get more stories of Black history made and in the making. Until next time, take care.